to Arts Foundation for asking me to be here. Thank you, all the artists who are here, work so hard, and make so generously. When I was about 15, I walked into a museum in Greece and saw a bronze statue of a young man. I knew little about him, but I experienced the feeling of the way he stood. I was physically conscious of his position, the weight in his feet, the set of his head, his gaze out. For the briefest of moments, I was him. I had borrowed his story, and in a heartbeat, he entered into the story of my own body. And instead of only feeling his stillness, I could also sense the movements which led up and away from that exact stillness. I was watching a performance of the ballet Romeo and Juliet. Margot Fonteyn was not a young woman then, and she was playing the 14-year-old Juliet. She was standing on the balcony, and the rest of the Royal Opera House stage was empty. She raised her arm into this huge expanse of air. Simple. My sense was that her movement was so emotionally accurate in its delivery that it had gone through the eye of a needle. That simple raise of her arm was both fine and full. Much later, when I began dancing, I realized how hard it is to achieve both at the same time. A passage from Annie Dillard's book, Pilgrim at Tinker's Creek, has Annie watching a small frog have the life sucked out of him by a giant water bug, until only his flapping skin remains. The rest has been dissolved and eaten. I am left with an immense physical unease. I can't remember the words, just the horrible sensation of a drain throughout my own body. I'm going to continue to talk about this series of embodied experiences that illustrate how we are nourished by the works of others and how these experiences are scored into our whole selves and not necessarily just cognitively. I hope that you in the room can draw down from your own feeling memories and maybe re-notice them. Now, I'm not talking about being inspired, but trying to notice and honor how the work of other people is essential to our own growth as makers. The works do have a kind of kinesthetic impact on me, but they don't directly influence me. What they do is help retune me. This retuning helps me to calm the overwhelming presence of every movement I do every day of my life, every second I breathe. I can be by their side and notice how they are at work with me. My body also senses other lives within mine. I am an animal and can feel the animal in me. I am a woman yet feel other than woman some of the time. I live now but can slip into some other kind of time zone. My body imagines. The shifting between these states, places, times is a complexity I need as a maker. I sense that I'm on a Mobius strip, shifting between one plane and another. On one plane, I am in the everyday, and then I slip into the other surface and onto something unknown. I twist from plane to plane. I have a collection of these companions. Often they are the small part of something much larger, like a dancer lifting her arm, or glimpsing a colour in another room which shoots through my body, or getting close to the stitching at the back of an Annie Alber's weaving, or seeing the flicker of thought, barely visible and wholly expressive, pass through an actor's face on screen. I can be undone. Am I stilled? Or am I animated? Or am I simply altered and then grow out of that alteration? I am hanging by a thread. I can be caught off guard when I see how a very young child holds their head. I am so moved by the newness of this ability, the neck holding the balance of a clearly visible skull, the pure line from the spine, and also knowing how that will change over time with the lives that these new bones will move into. I'm in a gallery, and it is a performance with dancers at work, and the visitors are able to come and go when they wish. Charlie Morrissey, dancer and choreographer, has made an event. He asks us to gather around him and says that he is going to try and reverse gravity in his body. He lies down, face on the floor. He talks about his spine being urged upwards. he speaks softly about the magnetic force being reversed and what that feels like. His hands are less able to be at rest on the floor. He begins to rise in a recognizable way, but he speaks about something else. We concentrate on his words. We are drawn to the conviction in his voice as he tells us about this shift. He gets to his feet, his spine still curved. There is quiet. He has given us his different story, and we have taken it on. He unfurls his spine. He tells us that his head is being drawn up. We are waiting. Each of us have partially felt his altered state. We are close to wondering if he might just raise off the floor. He smiles and said, "Maybe not today." A couple of weeks ago, I did a life drawing class. Now I'm a total beginner. The tutor, Henry, was so quietly informative that I felt every molecule in me wanting to learn. The relationship between a good teacher and a pupil is very precious and unforgettable. Now, I was in a situation a few years ago where an exchange of understanding and knowing was essential. I had been asked to perform in a celebration of the 100th birthday of the choreographer Merce Cunningham. He had died 10 years earlier. And dancers from his company were going to teach 25 of us 4 solos each. The 25 of us did not know each other well, and none of us had worked in Merce's company, or in some cases even studied his techniques. Jules Cunningham, no relation, but she had worked in his company for a long time, was my guide and teacher. Together we watched films of Merce dancing. Now, I was at that point 70 years old, and I was going to learn solos that Merce performed in his 70s, maybe in his 80s. He had been one of the most remarkable dancers of the 20th century. The story of his dancing self was very different from mine. Jules immediately indicated that I had to try and be accurate, and that in that attempt I would meet what Merce was asking. In the films, his movement was riveting, minimal because of his age, rhythmically very clear, but he was small within the screen and the image was also fuzzy. Jules did not want to dictate, but was asking for clarity, and I could not find it easily. She stood by my side and gave me instruction and affirmation. She dances like an exquisite pencil line, and I am messy and more like charcoal. We kept going, and I gradually absorbed the information given to me with such generosity. Layer upon layer of exchanges between Jules and I built up to become a working model of the solos. Every day, this model needed to be undone and done better. All of the other dancers were in the studio, all involved in these generous exchanges. We needed to reveal ourselves, be exposed, and learn again and again and again. It is a repetitive practice. Each repeat is not exactly the same as the last, it can't be. But each one can bring us closer to what we are asking or searching for. That is why I love being a maker. We are at constant work. We are in the company and nourished by centuries of the labour and practice of other makers from our own and different cultures. We can bring together different combinations of people, ways of doing and being, knowledge, materials, and processes. I honour all of those here in this room, brought together by the wonderful Arts Foundation, and I wish you well with all my heart. Thank you.